are in listen-only mode.
Hello everybody and welcome to another edition of the PASS Data Warehousing and Business Intelligence Virtual Chapter. This session I'm very pleased to present another British speaker, Allan Mitchell, who's a SQL Server MVP and has been for 10 years. He's well known for his work in SSIS and has recently moved into big data. And today's session we will be looking at PIG. As you can see there, PIG is a platform for analysing large datasets in Hadoop. And this looks quite an intriguing title, so I'll look forward to this session too. This would be particularly useful for people who have a background in SSIS. So just to let you know, we actually have another session starting in October as well, and Paul Turley will be joining us on the 2nd of October discussing mobile business intelligence, and I'll look forward to that session as well. If you are interested in speaking for our chapter, please do get in touch with us. Our email address will be at the end of this show. In case you're interested, we are holding the PASS Summit 2013, which is in Charlotte in North Carolina, and that is on October the 15th to the 18th. There's a wide range of opportunities to learn more about SQL Server. Personally, it's a highlight of my year. This will be my third summit, and I'm really looking forward to travelling the 5,000 miles again to see all the rest of the SQL Server community there. Now, Alan and I are holding a pre-con, which will be held on the Tuesday, and some of the content you will hear today is a preview of that pre-con. I should say there's a range of other sessions as well, pre-cons and other sessions. And if you're interested, have a look at the website, which is www.sqlpass.org. And if you are interested in attending, we have a discount code for our BI chapter, which is BiVC, and the URL, as you can see in the bottom of the screen, is www.passsummit.com, and hopefully we will see you there. Okay, so the session after this one is Paul Turley, so I'll tell you more details about that at the end. But if you're interested in joining us, you can sign up for a free membership today at sqlpass.org. And our specific chapter is bi.sqlpass.org, and if you're interested in speaking, our email address is at the bottom of the screen there. Now, I'm very pleased to present Alan's session. So what I will do now is I will make Alan presenter, and I will look forward to the session and we'll take questions at the end. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon everybody, or morning, or wherever you happen to be in the world. Hopefully you can see my screen now. Like Jen said, so this is a session on PIG, which is a tool in Hadoop, and we're going to throw in a little bit of SSIS, and when I say a little bit, I mean a little bit. And we're also going to throw in a tool called Scoop, and it'll become apparent why we're going to look at Scoop as well, once we've looked at integration services. Okay, so this is me, and like Jen said, usually, well, for a long time I spoke on integration services. So I did a book with Rox and a number of other authors on integration services, the Professional series. That's where I work, is with Jen on Copper Blue Consulting. I specialise in data and process integration. I guess that's why I've got interested now in PIG, because it's all about manipulating data and moving it around. I'm a SQL Server MVP, just as Jen is, and that's my Twitter name, and there's my email. I think well, Jen says that we're recording this, so if you don't catch it now, you can always watch the recording back. Okay, so what am I going to talk about today? So there's a number of things I want to talk about. I just want to very, very quickly cover what is big data, and this definition will be my definition. It's the one I like to use. If you look at the big data hashtag on Twitter, people talking about it, there's 1,000,000,001 different ways that people describe big data, and so this will be my take on it, and maybe it'll help you decide what big data is for you. Then I'm going to talk about Hadoop, just a little bit about Hadoop. What is it and why exactly I'm starting to talk about it, why me and Jen are starting to talk about Hadoop, and why there's other people out there in the SQL Server community talking about Hadoop. We'll have a look at the Hadoop ecosystem, but the main part of this session will be on a specific tool, and that tool's Pig. We'll have a brief look at integration services, and because everybody likes integration services, it's good to use, it's powerful, it's Microsoft's ETL tool of choice, it's the enterprise one, and you're going to be moving about data in a Microsoft world, you're going to be using integration services. And then we'll look at Scoop, because the last point doesn't really work very well. Yeah, so we'll fill in the blanks for integration services, and then, like Jen says, we'll do questions at the end. I'm notoriously bad for running over, so we will do questions, so keep with me. I'll be keeping a close eye on the clock as well. Okay, so what is big data then? Like I said, I think it's a very, very abused phrase, or key, buzzword phrase. Some people it's data in the terabytes, some people it's data in the petabytes, and some people it's data in the zettabytes. It really is a subjective thing. It's based on the last statement on this slide for me. When people are talking about big data as well, they mention the V's. So these always come up, and if you go and listen to people, they're always talking about the V's. So there's 3, but there's really 5, and there might be more if you read different people. So the three core members of the V Club are volume, velocity, and variety. So volume is obviously the size, velocity is how fast it's coming at you, and the variety is it rows and columns, or is it JSON documents, is it video, is it emails, what does it look like? Do you get a vast array of data that comes in that you want to be able to pick up and look at? The veracity is very important, because if something's not truthful, it's not fit for purpose. It's not going to give you any of the final V, which is value. How much value do you have? And I guess the value, these go up to make something where I see a lot of people storing a lot of data. They've no idea why they're storing it, but somebody told them that they're not allowed to delete any data whatsoever. So they store absolutely everything, and they never do anything with it. Mainly because they can't, maybe because they don't know what to do with it, because it's a big Exchange server store. So the last point on this slide is from a guy called Werner Vogels, who's the CTO at Amazon, and he describes big data as something that, when you have to be innovative to collect it, store it, organize it, analyze it, and share it, that's when you know you've got big data. And that, personally, for me, is my favorite definition of big data. The last point's important because, like I said, if you can store all the data you want, but if you can't share it, what's the point in it? And you've got to be able to store it and analyze it and collect it and be efficient about it as well. You can't just put it on a 5400 spin cycle disk, a huge one, and expect to get good performance of it. Okay, so what's big data? A lot of people would accept that the Large Hadron Collider is an example of big data. It's certainly the biggest thing I've seen recently. So you get particles colliding a billion times a second. You get more than a million jobs a day. It generates 10 gigabytes of data a second, which is 864,000 gigs a day. And they generally don't run it all the time because they have to let it cool down. They change the settings, but they're generating about 15 petabytes of data annually. Yeah, so that, for me, is a good example of big data, because they do have to be genuinely innovative in what they do to be able to do anything with that kind of data. Okay, so why am I talking about Hadoop? So, like I said, this is a Microsoft chapter. I usually talk about Microsoft products, and why am I talking about something which is Hadoop, which is open source? Well, Hadoop, Microsoft have collaborated with a company called Hortonworks, and Microsoft are now providing their own distribution of Hadoop. And it comes in two flavors. I'll cover the bottom one first. So HD Insight Server is something that you can download. It's a single node cluster, and it's not extensible, so you can't make it into a 15-node cluster. It is exactly that, and we'll have a look at it later. It's for you to play. It's like a sandbox, really. It's for you to play, get used to things like Pig, like Hive, like the Hadoop file system. Just get used to playing around, and if it breaks, it breaks. It's not a big deal. You can just go download it again. The preferred way of using it is obviously Azure. So you can go to windowsazure.com, and currently you have to ask to be allowed to use HD Insight. But once you get allowed onto there, you can provision your Hadoop cluster, and you can choose how many nodes you want to be. So you could go 4 nodes, you could go 32 nodes. And then you have to choose a storage account. So the preferred way of working with storage in Azure from Microsoft is to work with Azure Storage Vaults. And you're up and running, and you can submit jobs, and there's a web UI, and it's all managed by Microsoft, and it's the preferred way of doing things. Once you've finished using it, you can tear down your Hadoop cluster. So it might be that you instantiate PowerShell, power up a Azure Hadoop cluster, HD Insight cluster, submit your jobs, do your work, get the results, use PowerShell, tear it all down again. And you'll see that with other providers as well, where they provide dynamic clusters. You only use them for a certain amount of period that you want to. So the demos today, well, we'll use a mixture of two distributions. I'm going to use HDP, which is the Hortonworks data platform. And I'm also going to use HD Insight. So I'm going to use HD Insight for the Scoop demos. I'm going to use HDP for the Pig stuff, just because it's got a better UI right now. The HD Insight, if the command line is your thing, then you'll love HD Insight. For me personally, I like my UIs, and that's why I like HDP, which has got a UI tool on top called Hue. Okay, so what is Hadoop? So Hadoop really is only two things. It's a distributed file system, and it's something called MapReduce. So with this distributed file system, you have each of the nodes in your cluster join the cluster, but they all have their own storage, they all have their own processing power, and they all have their own copies of the data. And so that makes the storage distributed. The idea is that you can have commodity hardware, so you don't have to have a great big Dell R910 on each node of the cluster, because it would be very, very expensive, and if you can afford that, then away you go. But it's designed so that you can run relatively commodity hardware. Think of SQL Azure, all that Windows Azure, SQL Azure stuff. That's all commodity hardware, because these things break. You want to whip it out, put something else in, and it scales to potentially thousands of nodes. So Facebook's cluster of Hadoop currently runs at, well, last time I checked was 4,000 nodes. MapReduce is a programming paradigm where you take a statement and you break it apart. You send it out to mappers who do work. You reduce it back through reducers, and you come out with a result at the end. So it allows you to distribute the processing of a data set or a job over multiple nodes. One of the things about Hadoop is that it's loved by developers. Developers love it, and when you've finished here, if you go look at the Hadoop ecosystem, there are lots and lots and lots and lots of tools, because developers love creating these tools, and there's a tool for pretty much everything. So you can do graph databases, you can do column storage, you can do log importing, loads of stuff. So that's also a bit of a downside, is that it's very difficult to keep up with what's out there, and it's constantly evolving. So I subscribe to a couple of news feeds, and I watch who's doing what, and I see that Cloudera have just released, or they're releasing, a new search application that sits on top of Hadoop and uses the HDFS file system, and I saw that this morning, and it evolves all the time like that. The latest thing is Yarn, yet another resource governor, and it's just always evolving. Okay, so here's some of the things that you can get. So this is from Cloudera's distribution, and there's always going to be a core of applications, I guess, that you get. Some of the applications in here are present in HD Insight, some aren't. HD Insight has other things that these don't have. So Pig and Hive, they're a given. Got to have that. So the MapReduce paradigm, got to have that. HDFS, Hadoop, like I said, is HDFS and MapReduce. HD Insight currently doesn't have Flume. It has Scoop, but it doesn't have Flume. Will it be added? I hope so. So Flume is a way of having a listener and piping log data through into HDFS. So it sits there almost like a listener on the logs and then brings it all in. So these are the tools for coordination, like Zookeeper. You can go away and have a look at them. But I'll be using Hue as well. So Hue is incredibly useful. It makes it that little bit easier. Think of it as Management Studio, really, for Hadoop. And like I said, there's 1,000,001 other tools that we could have included, but we could have just spent an hour looking at tools. Okay, so now we've got to look at Pig. So what is Pig? So Pig for me is all about moving data around. So Hadoop scripting. So the language is called Pig Latin as well. It is incredibly efficient. It's very, very efficient. You can spawn MapReduce jobs. In fact, about its efficiency. So one of the reasons why Pig was invented by Yahoo was that in order to be able to code a MapReduce job, which is what everything boils down to in the back, you needed a PhD and you had to be a ninja. So somebody decided, you know what, this is just too painful. So they took on two tools, Pig and Hive. They're both born out of the fact that people didn't want to have to be scientists to write MapReduce jobs. So what they do is you use these higher level interfaces and they spawn MapReduce jobs in the back. And these tools as well, Pig and Hive, are constantly evolving. I was reading something on the internet the other day that says, well, they're a bit young, they can't do all the things that TSQL can do. But I was showing Hive the other day, and it's got the windowing function, so it's got all of that kind of stuff. And Hive, I think Jen did a presentation last week on it when she was doing data visualization. It's something that you will use if you get into using Hadoop. And it's schema on read as well. So when we use Pig, we go to a data set, and that data set hasn't already been forced into a structure for us. So there's no structure having been imposed on that data set. When we pick it up in Pig, we tell it how we want it to look. We tell it how to slice it into a structure that we can use. Yeah, so I think that's really rather good. And Grunt is the command line interface that you get when you submit Pig jobs. So here's the Pig data types. And you'll see that a lot of them are similar to ones that we would expect to find in other databases or other languages. So we've got integers, we've got longs, floats, doubles. But the bottom three are the interesting ones. So later on, when I do the demos, I'm going to be looking at the last two, bags and maps. And they, in the relational world, they just don't really fit, or if they do fit, you've broken first normal form. So these are examples of where data that just doesn't fit into the classic rows and columns. Okay, so Pig. Pig is a procedural language, so you tell it exactly how it is that you want to read the data, process the data, and store it. You tell it exactly what it is that you want to do with that data. And the difference between that and SQL, you describe a result and you get it back via a black box. You have a certain amount of control because you can hint as to what indexes you want to use or what join types you want to use. But eventually you're going to submit it into the query processor and it's going to do its magic. So that's a declarative language. You're just describing what it is that you want to get back, and you're not describing exactly how it is that you want that data to be processed when it gets into the engine. So that's an important distinction, and it makes for easier reading, I think, being a procedural language. Okay, so what do I think Pig's going to be useful for? Why are you guys going to use Pig if you use Hadoop? Because if you're a Microsoft guy or girl, why are you going to find Pig useful? And I think a lot of people are going to use, Hadoop, Pig, Jobs, Hive for data that they can't process in their relational databases. I don't think they're going to get rid of their relational database. I think they're going to have them side by side. And what will happen is you might suck data out of your relational database, take something from a file store somewhere, take something from somewhere else, and it might be a massive amount of data. And you want to chug through that in an overnight batch job. I think you will do that, and you will use Pig, you will do your ETL, and you will get a result back, and you will look at that result. You might import it back into the relational database. But that's how I think a large usage of Pig and Hadoop will be. It's also useful for raw data research, so ad hoc querying. So you've got a big, I hand you a directory with 15 terabytes worth of data, and I say, okay, there you go, that's the sensor results for the last year. You can just put Pig on top, and you can be up and running in minutes. So you can have a quick look at the data, have a look how it's structured, and then you can start to control how Pig is going to pick it up and look at it. And I think that just makes it very, very powerful. Okay, so how fast is it? And this is the kicker, is when you submit a job in Pig, it's never really going to be any less than 30 seconds before you get the data back. So if you're a relational guy and 30 nanoseconds is too long for you, then Pig might not be your thing. There's an overhead. There's a huge overhead with ramping all your mappers up and your reducers and going to the name node and find out who's got the data. And there's an overhead. And that overhead exists if you've got 10 gigs of data, or 100 gigs of data. But what it does mean is it doesn't mean that if processing 10 gigs of data takes a minute, it does not mean that processing 100 gigs of data takes 10 minutes. It doesn't work like that. There's the initial ramp up, but then it's not a linear scale from there. What it is it depends. Okay, so Heriot-Watt University did a study about PIG and MapReduce. And what they came out with was, well, MapReduce, yeah, you can tweak it and you can make it run like the wind. You can make it's very quick. Problem is it's not all that easy, and they found that PIG wasn't a whole load slower. So not noticeably slower, or not slower so that it affects you. It scales, and of course it is so much easier to write. Okay, so let's stop with the slides and let's have a look at some PIG. Okay, so this is HDP, like I said earlier, and this is Hue. Say hello to Hue. So Hue is my management studio, and at the moment I'm browsing my file system. And you can see up the top there, I've got the different tools that I can use. So I've got hcatalog, I can submit jobs, I've got the Hue command line, I've got Hive, I've got PIG, and I've got this file browser as well. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to go into PIG. And let me get my first demo. Now what I'll do is I'll just zoom into this statement. What I've got is after this I've got some slides which give you the anatomy of a PIG statement. But you can see it and it's nice. It's relatively easy to follow. Don't get me wrong, the variables are terribly named. I keep meaning to change them, never have, should do, because if I came to somebody's code and I found variables named A, B, C, D, I wouldn't be that impressed. So I apologize for variable names, but for this I think it's okay. I don't, but let's move on. Okay, so initially what I'm going to do is I'm going to read into everything, all the data files that are in user input files. And what I'll do is I'll use PIG storage, and I've decided that the data in there is separated by columns. So the attributes are separated by columns. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to impose a schema over the top of that. I don't have to. It does make coding easier later on because you can refer to attributes by attribute name instead of positional. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to filter A by month is not equal to month, because this data set has header rows in each of the files, so I want to get rid of that, and the way to do that would be to get rid of that B statement. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to group B by month and crime type. So needless to say, this is publicly available crime data for an area of the UK. And then for each row that's in C, generate the group and the count of B as count. And then we'll dump it. Dump it means show it onto the desktop. So what we can do is we can go and execute, and then it'll go away. So now it's ramping up, it's creating all of its background processes, and we'll see it later on with Scoop that it gives you a log output, so you'll see lots and lots of stuff going flying past. Yeah, but now it's going away, and by now, if you're a SQL Server guy, you'd be tearing your hair out, because this just takes far too long. Like I said, there's projects within Hadoop, the Hadoop ecosystem, that looking to make things like Hive real time, and because they want to skip some of the phases that these things go through. So real-time might work. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to generate two sets of data. I'm going to describe D, so I want to say, okay, so what does D look like? And then I'm going to dump D. I'm going to put it out to the console. So it's almost finished, and there we go. So you can see D is, the group is month, which is a char array, crime type, which is char array, count, which is a long, and then you can see that it goes down, and month is 2010-12, the crime type is robbery, and there were none in that particular month. Now, you might think that this particular area of the UK is incredibly crime-free, but if we move on to one of the other pages, you'll see that there were a few. Yeah. So that's a very quick example. What you could also do as another statement, a slight variation is you'll see the order by. Now you could do order by the attribute name, but I didn't want to because I wanted to show positional notation. So like I said, if I had imposed a schema, if I hadn't have said that these are the attribute names that I want to give, I could have used positional notation. And whilst that may make sense to me, it might not make sense to the person that's coming along. So it's probably best to do it the other way. In fact, it is best to do it the other way. But this works perfectly happily, and we can go and execute this job. So what I'll do is I'll just do one more example using this crime data, and then we'll get on to some data that, if you're in the US, this will make a whole load more sense. And it's about a game that I really, really like, although every time that I've been out to the US, I've never managed to see a game. It's about baseball. Baseball's kind of similar to cricket. Love cricket in the UK. Love baseball, but I've never managed to figure out how to get out to the US when the baseball season is. So I never end up going to see a game. I will at some point. We're out in Charlotte in October, but I don't think that's the baseball season. So I'm probably going to find out when the baseball season is and go. Okay, let's wait for this to finish. It's got to do the ordering, so it's probably going to be a little bit longer. But like I said, you're never really going to get any less than 30 seconds for this. So the next demo that I want to do whilst this is carrying on is, instead of doing this dump here, I want to do a store. So what I think, like I said, with people doing ETL, what I think people will do is people will dump the results of whatever it is that Pig's done for them. They will dump it into a directory for picking up. Now that could be for picking up using Hive, or it could be picking up in another Pig job. So hopefully this won't take too much longer. This is only a single thing, like good. So there you go. You can see not much difference from before, but now it's ordered. So the final thing that I wanted to show for this particular data was this statement. I'll just show it. So you can store the outputs of your manipulations. You can store it into an output directory, and then you can go and consume it in a different tool. Yeah, so imagine that we've output the data into user output. What we could very quickly do is we could then very quickly move into Hive, and then we could go create a Hive table. And now we can go and consume that in whatever tool will manage an ODBC connection to Hadoop. really, really easy to use. But let's get back to Pig. Okay. This data set is slightly different. So if I just move this data set over, this is the data set. You'll see that this is players and teams, general stats about players and teams. So you'll see that Landon Powell played for Oakland Athletics. He had a couple of positions, which were catcher and first baseman. And then we've got a load of what look like key value pairs. And that's exactly what they are. They're a map. They're a key value pair combination. And you can see that there's different amounts of key value pairs for each particular person. So if you look up the top, you can see that the guy up there's got quite a few. But if we come down, J.J. Putz of the New York Mets, he's only got one. He played in 162 games and he was relief pitcher. Maybe that's why. Maybe he was just a relief guy. Yeah. But these here, these bags of tuples, which is catcher and designated hitter, and the maps are going to kind of require us to do something a bit special. So let's get Pig back up. What we can do here is we can see that we can load up that file and we can impose this schema on it. So we can see that there's a name, there's a team, and then position is a bag of tuples. It's a bag of char arrays. So we don't know how many. We've no idea. It could be hundreds. And then we've got this map, which is BAT, which we call BAT. Yet again, multiple maps. So let's see what this is. All we're going to do is we're just going to take a random 10. Okay, so it's going to go away and do its thing. And what it's going to essentially do with the flatten is it's going to take the multiple tuples that were in position and it's going to pivot them. So for each name and team, the positions are going to be pivoted. So if you played for 15 positions in a particular team, you're going to have now 15 rows instead of the single row, which is easier for us to look at. Right? So hopefully that will come up very soon. It's taking a bit longer than usual, but there you go. We've got David Price, Tampa Bay Rays, and he was a pitcher, and David Price, Tampa Bay Rays, and he was a starting pitcher. He got same with York Posada and Martin Prado for the Atlantic Braves. Yeah? Martin Prado had 3 positions: infielder, left fielder, second baseman. So another way to look at it as well is when we want to get something out of the maps. So we want to get batting average out of the maps. So we can do that as runs, and then what we can do is we can perform a calculation over that. So let me just execute this one. Let me just... Okay, so hopefully you can see, besides my awful naming conventions for my variables, you can see that the language makes sense. You pick up the data, you perform operations on it, you tell it at each particular phase how to do it, and you can see that you can handle complex data types or unusual data types with Pig. You can do the same in Hive as well, and it allows you to perform some analysis on data that previously you wouldn't have been able to. And you can also do MapReduce over videos. There's an interesting presentation I was looking at the other day where they were taking individual, they were looking at videos and being able to pick out certain characteristics of frames in videos. So I think this UI just makes everything so much easier as well. When we do Scoop in a minute, you'll see how this is the way to go. There's no UI for Scoop at the moment. Again, was reading recently that somebody's going to develop a UI for Scoop. Makes sense, and it will be incredibly useful. And there we go. So you can see that we can get the batting average. Chicago Cubs batting average is 0.2. Yeah, nice and easy. Okay, so let's get back to the slides. Okay, so a recap on loading data. So this is how you would load data. And like I said, if you're a Microsoft person and you're using Azure, you'll probably be using Azure Storage Vault. So the bottom code there is for using Azure Storage Vault. How to filter a table, i.e. where. How to only give 10 rows. Should be random. I've never actually checked whether it truly is random, but everything I've ever read and everything I've ever seen suggests that it is truly random. Okay, so you can project. Like I said, you can use positional notation, or you can use the named attributes. It would be good form and kinder to your fellow programmers if you use the attribute names. An interesting one is you can take everything up to the fourth attribute. So here you can just specify the group word and it will project to you symbol, because that's what you've grouped by. And if you do this, group will now consist of symbol and DT. Like I said before, you can dump it, and dumping means just put it out to the console. Or you can store it. So you can store intermediate files, and then what you can do, or you could do, you saw me earlier pick up those intermediate files by creating a Hive table. Well, this one, you could use it in post-processing. So it might be that if we're working in a development team, my process does a certain amount of stuff, and your process does a whole lot of other stuff. But you've got to wait until mine processes stuff, dumps it, and then you'll pick it up, and your pig job will then go and do something. Okay, so like I said, schema on read, not write, i.e. we've not pre-imposed a schema on the data. I kind of think that's nice because we don't know how people are going to use our data. Right? In the relational world, the thought is that we impose, or we limit the endlessness of questions that we can ask. Pig is flexible. It spawns MapReduce jobs, and like I said, it means that you don't have to be a ninja to work with it. And like I said before, I think it's a big processing engine, and I think people will dump results and you'll consume it in Power X, whatever the Power tool is that you want to use. So Power Map, Power Query, or whatever it is that you want to use. Okay, integration services and Hadoop. I said that this was a little section, and it really is going to be a little section. Okay, there it is. Okay, but integration services is Microsoft's enterprise ETL tool, but the problem is it isn't hooked up to Hadoop. It doesn't really know about Hadoop. So it can connect to Hive and do a get because there's an DBC driver, and Hive presents data in rows and columns, and that's nice and that's easy. So you can do that, but you can't put anything back again. So if you've got an ETL process that you've been working through, and you want to push it into Hive, Hive or Hadoop or whatever, you can't. You could possibly write a custom component that dumps your data into ASV, or a custom component that would take it into HDFS. But out of the box, out of the toolbox, you're not going to get much help. Because Microsoft have got a Hadoop distro now, I would expect this to change, to be honest. They can't have an enterprise ETL tool and a big data platform like Hadoop and not be able to put the two together. So I'd expect that to change. I certainly hope it will. Okay, so Scoop. So it's SQL to Hadoop, right? So SQL being a relational database, to be honest. And anything with a JDBC driver you can connect to and you can do something with it. So a lot of the examples use MySQL, but you can use SQL Server, you can use Oracle, but the main feature is that it's got to have a JDBC driver. So what can you do with it? Well, there's a ton of stuff that you can do with it. So you can import, so you can go from a relational database into HDFS, sorry about that. You can export, so you can take data from HDFS into a relational database. And there's loads more commands. So you can create Hive tables, you can pump it directly into Hive. You can evaluate the statement that you want to do, rather like ticking on the tick in Management Studio and saying, okay, does the syntax work? So you can do all of that. So I think the easiest way is to show you, to be honest. Right. Unfortunately, we're now going to be using the command line. So this is HD Insights, but this is the HD Insights server that I was talking about, so this is the local install. So what we could do with this is we could just do a very, very simple statement. So just let me paste this one in. And there we go. And I'll zoom in. Okay, so Scoop, list the tables, connect to a JDBC SQL Server driver, give me the details, username and password. Password with a capital P or minus P with a capital P says, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Alan for it in a bit. I'll ask him for it in a minute. Okay, so let's go ahead and execute that. And here's where it wants my password. And there you go. So we can now see that in our database that we connected to, these are the particular tables. Okay. So what do we want to do? Maybe what we want to do is we want to import from SQL Server the DIM product category, and what we want to do is we want to dump that data into a particular folder in HDFS, which is User Adventure Works and product category, and I'm going to have one mapper. You can have many mappers, and this is a way that you could control the parallelism. Okay, so let me go ahead and do that, and it'll ask me for my password. And away we go. And this is what I was saying before about all the feedback that you get. And one of the things that you can see down the bottom there is my map and reduce percentages. So that kind of gives you an idea of what's going on. So you can see maps at 100%, and there you go, it's retrieved 4 records. So if now we go and have a look at the file system, we can see that on the file system there is 4 rows. I remember we would have done that in that nicer UI with Hue, but HD Insight doesn't have Hue currently. Okay, so let me just go here and let me just get rid of that directory. Okay. What we could also do is, if we don't want to import all of the table, is we could add a where clause. So if you see down here, where English product name is bikes, and again we'll still dump out our data, so this will be where we can go and pick it up. So let's go ahead and let's do that. I hope this font's okay. I asked Jen yesterday. Jen and I did a check on visual on what it looks like, and we think that this font's adequate. Okay, so it retrieved 1 row. So let's go back and let's have a look, and there you go. And let's just drop that directory. Let's clean it out. But what we could also do is, what we might want to do is, instead of dumping the data into the file system, maybe what we want to do is actually put it into Hive. So create a table in Hive and push all our data into there. So the way we do that is we do Hive import, and we give it the name of the Hive table. So let's just go over to Hive. So if I type Hive here, what I can do in Hive is I can do show tables, and there shouldn't be anything in there. There's nothing in Hive. So let's import our data into Hive. Password. There we go. It'll take a little bit longer because it's got to work in conjunction with Hive. But again, this isn't a big cluster, so if you have Hadoop, chances are you've got larger clusters, and you'll be able to analyze a whole load more data easily. So there you go. So we've done the Hive import is complete. So if we switch back to Hive, we can do our show tables again, and there we go. We've got our demo table, and never type in a demo. And there we go. So that's our 4 rows. Now previously we were pushing out to the file system, but now we're pushing out to Hive. So you can see, hopefully you can see these different tools. We can let them work together. Scoop, Hive, Pig, Hive. They all work together. Hive, Pig. We can get them all to work together to do our jobs. And like I said at the top, just because Hadoop is the latest and greatest tool that seems to be out there, and lots of people want to use it to solve all of their problems, like I said at the top, I think you will have Hadoop and you will have your SQL servers, and I think they will live side by side. I don't think one will replace the other. And if you look now with Parallel Data Warehouse and Polybase, you've got a direct link into Hadoop, but Hadoop's still doing all the munging. Yeah, so that's kind of how I see things being used. Okay, so back to the slides. Okay, so thank you for listening. I know a lot of you are probably in the States, so it's probably around lunchtime now. But thanks for taking an hour out of your time. I've enjoyed presenting this, and hopefully now you'll go away, look up some of the things that I've told you, maybe download the Hortonworks or Cloudera or Microsoft Sandbox and have a play. They're nice and easy. They're all VMs, so you can blow them up. You can do whatever you want with them. Just have a play and get used to it, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. So thank you very much. Jen?
Hello there. Thank you very much, Alan. That was a really good session. Thank you, everybody, for listening. So we have one comment which says the Atlanta Braves may be playing in playoffs around the summit, and that's from Eric. So I don't know anything about sport, so I'll have to leave that with you to comment. So I don't know if that's a good or bad thing.
I'll definitely be looking that up. Like I said, I've always wanted to go to a baseball game. So thank you very much, and at least I know that I might be able to get one. So okay, that's one of my summit days out, not doing summit stuff, and now maybe I can get a baseball game in.
All right, that sounds good. I must admit I haven't been to a baseball game either. Maybe that's something that we Brits should try when we're over in Summit. Yeah. And
yes.
Just a few people saying thank you. So thanks, Audra, for that nice comment. That's good. And
thank you very much.
Just to wrap up for this evening, so finally, just to say a big thank you to Alan for his time in presenting today. And I just wanted to thank you all for listening. What I will do is I will pick out a name from the list of the attendees, and I will send your details across to Pragmatic Works, and they will send you out a book. So thank you to our sponsors, Pragmatic Works, for looking after us today as well. So that's all from us this evening in the UK, and wherever you are in the world, good morning, good evening or good night. Thanks everyone. Bye.